I discovered the message at exactly 3 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon, sitting in my home office in Minneapolis, with a cup of chamomile tea cooling beside my laptop. The notification appeared on my phone screen like a slap across the face, clinical and brutal in its simplicity. I'm done. Found someone half your age and will move to Dubai. Already sold your car and cleared our joint account. Don't bother calling. My hands remained steady as I read the words again, then a third time. 27 years of marriage reduced to a text message. I was 54 years old, and my husband Gregory had just informed me that he was abandoning our life together for a 27-year-old secretary named Sienna. The tea sat forgotten as I processed the information with the same methodical attention I brought to managing the pharmaceutical distribution company I had built from nothing over the past 18 years. Gregory worked in middle management at a logistics firm, a job he had held with moderate success while I grew my business into a regional powerhouse. We had no children, a choice we made together in our early 30s when my company began demanding every spare moment of my attention. He had seemed content with our arrangement, or so I believed, until the words glowing on my screen proved otherwise. I opened my banking application with fingers that felt disconnected from my body. The joint account we had maintained for decades showed a balance of $732. Gregory had withdrawn $143,000 the previous evening, while I attended a dinner meeting with potential investors. The car he mentioned, a sleek sedan I had purchased just 8 months earlier, was indeed gone from our driveway when I walked to the window and looked down at the empty space where I had parked it that morning. The rational part of my brain, the part that negotiated million-dollar contracts and navigated complex supply chain logistics, began calculating. Gregory had access to our joint account. Yes. But he knew nothing about the separate business accounts, the investments I had carefully cultivated, or the property holdings registered solely in my name. He thought he was leaving me destitute, stranded without transportation or funds. The image would have been almost comical if it were not so vindictive. I set down my phone and pulled up my laptop, accessing the security system I had installed throughout our house 6 months earlier. Gregory had complained about the expense, calling it unnecessary paranoia, but I had insisted after a break-in occurred 3 blocks away. Now I scrolled through the footage from the past 48 hours, watching my husband of nearly 3 decades move through our home with the furtive energy of a thief. There he was, removing boxes from the garage at 2 a.m. 2 nights ago, loading suitcases into his truck while I slept upstairs, trusting and unaware. Meeting with a young woman with long dark hair in our driveway yesterday afternoon, kissing her with an enthusiasm I had not witnessed in years. The footage was remarkably clear, time-stamped and saved to my cloud storage automatically. I took a sip of the now cold tea and considered my response. Gregory expected tears, perhaps angry phone calls or desperate pleas for reconciliation. He had positioned himself as the victor in this scenario, the man who outsmarted his older wife and escaped to a glamorous new life abroad with a younger woman on his arm. My phone buzzed with another message. This one was from my longtime attorney, Felicity, responding to an email I had sent 3 weeks earlier. Everything is in place as discussed. Give me the word and we proceed. 3 weeks ago, I had noticed irregularities in our credit card statements. Small charges to jewelry stores I had never visited. Restaurant bills from establishments I had never heard of. Hotel rooms booked in the city when Gregory claimed to be traveling for work conferences. I had said nothing, asked no questions, simply documented everything and consulted with Felicity about protecting my assets. The law firm where Felicity practiced specialized in complex financial cases, and she had guided me through the process of quietly securing everything I had built. Gregory's name appeared on our house deed. Yes, but he had no claim to my business, or the considerable wealth it generated. The joint account he had emptied represented perhaps 2% of my total assets, money I had placed there specifically for household expenses and emergencies. I typed a response to his message, keeping my tone light and almost playful. Sweetheart, check again. 2 words, no explanation. I knew Gregory well enough to predict his reaction. He would open the banking app with a smug satisfaction, expecting to see my panic-stricken attempts to access funds that no longer existed. Instead, he would find something entirely different. While he had been busy planning his escape to Dubai with Sienna, I had been making my own arrangements. The joint account showed $732, true, but that was because every automated payment, every direct deposit, every transfer had been rerouted to accounts he could not touch. His paycheck from the logistics firm, which had been deposited into our joint account for years, was now sitting in a new account I had opened specifically for this purpose. An account in my name only, inaccessible to him. More importantly, the house he thought he owned equally with me had been refinanced quietly last month. The mortgage company had required only my signature because the property had been purchased originally with my earnings, my credit, my financial backing. Gregory's name appeared on the deed as a spouse, but he had no equity stake, a fact he had never bothered to verify in all our years together. The security footage continued playing on my laptop screen, a silent documentary of betrayal unfolding in high definition. I watched Gregory pack away photograph albums, items that held sentimental value but no monetary worth. He left behind my grandmother's jewelry, the pieces he knew were precious to me, taking instead the expensive watch I had given him for our 20th anniversary and the designer luggage set he had purchased with our joint credit card. My phone remained silent for 15 minutes after I sent my response. I imagined him checking the banking app, his confident smile fading as he realized something had gone wrong with his carefully orchestrated exit. The money he thought he had stolen was now locked away where he could not reach it, and his own paycheck had vanished into an account that did not appear on his banking application. When my phone finally rang, I let it go to voicemail. Gregory's voice came through tight with barely controlled anger. "What did you do? Where's my money? Call me back right now, Danielle. This is not funny." His money. The audacity of that statement almost made me laugh. I had supported him through 2 job losses, covered his mother's medical expenses when she fell ill, and bankrolled his failed attempt to start a consulting business 5 years ago. Everything he owned, everything he had grown accustomed to, came from my labor and business acumen. Yet in his mind, I was the one stealing from him. I saved the voicemail and continued reviewing the security footage. There was Sienna again, younger than some of the employees at my company, giggling as Gregory carried her across the threshold of our home like a macabre parody of Newlyweds. They had been in our bedroom, in our bed, while I worked late at the office to secure a contract that would expand my distribution network into 3 new states. The logistics of Gregory's plan began revealing themselves as I dug deeper into our shared digital life. He had booked flights to Dubai for tomorrow evening, purchased using a credit card I had not known existed. The card statement, which I accessed through our shared email account, showed months of charges I had never seen. Dinners, hotels, gifts, all funded by what appeared to be a personal loan he had taken out, using our house as collateral. That was his first major mistake. He had forged my signature on the loan documents, a federal crime that carried significant penalties. I took screenshots of everything, forwarding them to Felicity with a brief message explaining what I had discovered. Her response came within minutes. "This changes things considerably. I'm contacting the authorities now. Do not engage with him directly until we have everything documented." But I was already planning my next move, one that would ensure Gregory understood the full scope of his miscalculation. The pharmaceutical distribution business I had built was not just successful, it was essential. Hospitals, clinics, and pharmacies across the upper Midwest depended on my supply chains for critical medications. I employed 83 people in our Minneapolis headquarters alone, with another 47 working in satellite offices throughout the region. Gregory knew I owned a business, but he had never paid attention to the details. He attended company holiday parties and smiled for photographs, but he could not have named more than 3 of my employees, or explained what my company actually did. To him, my work was a vague concept that generated money he could spend on golf memberships and expensive dinners. He had no idea that I served on the board of directors for 2 hospitals, that I had been courted by venture capital firms interested in expanding my business model nationally, or that I had recently been approached about selling my company for a sum that would have set us both up for life. I had delayed that decision, wanting to discuss it with Gregory first, foolishly believing we were partners in our marriage. My laptop screen showed another notification. The security system had detected motion in our garage. I switched cameras and saw Gregory had returned, moving quickly through the space with his phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking animatedly, gesturing with his free hand in the way he did when agitated or stressed. I turned on the audio feed, another feature of the security system Gregory had dismissed as excessive. His voice came through clearly, tinny, but understandable. "I'm telling you, something is wrong. The money was there yesterday. I checked 3 times. Now it's just gone. And my paycheck never showed up. Danielle did something, I know she did." The voice on the other end was female, young, with a slight whine that set my teeth on edge. Sienna, presumably, learning that her escape to Dubai might be postponed. "Can't you just take more money? You said she was loaded. Just transfer it from one of her other accounts." Gregory's laugh was bitter. "It doesn't work like that. I don't have access to her business accounts. Never did. I thought the joint account would be enough to get us started, let us settle in Dubai before I found work there. But if that money's gone..." "What about the house? You said you could sell the house." "That takes time. Months, probably. And I'd need her signature unless I..." He trailed off, and I could practically see the wheels turning in his head, calculating options that ranged from unethical to illegal. I made another call to Felicity, this time from my office line rather than my cell phone. She answered on the first ring. "I need to know exactly what protections I have in place," I said without preamble. "And I need to understand what actions Gregory might take if he becomes desperate." Felicity's voice was calm, professional, the tone of someone who had navigated these waters many times before. "Given what you've forwarded me in the past hour, he's already committed loan fraud by forging your signature. That's a criminal matter, not just civil. The police will be very interested in the documentation you've provided. As for what he might do next, that depends on how desperate he becomes." "Does he have a history of violence?" "No, never. He's a coward at heart, more likely to run than fight." "Then my advice is to stay somewhere else tonight. A hotel, a friend's house, anywhere he won't expect to find you. Let me handle the legal proceedings. By tomorrow morning, he'll have more to worry about than accessing bank accounts." I packed an overnight bag with steady hands, moving through our bedroom like a guest in a hotel rather than a woman abandoning the home she had lived in for over 2 decades. Photographs lined the dresser, frozen moments from a marriage that had apparently ended long before today. Gregory and me on our wedding day, impossibly young and hopeful. A vacation to Seattle where we had walked through Pike Place Market and sworn we would travel the world together someday. The cruise we took for our 15th anniversary, both of us standing at the ship's railing with the sunset painting everything gold. Had he been unhappy even then? I could not remember any particular signs, no arguments or cold silences that might have foreshadowed this moment. We had simply coexisted, 2 people sharing space and resources while pursuing separate lives. I worked constantly, building my company into something substantial. He worked his moderate job and apparently cultivated a relationship with his secretary, planning an exit strategy that would leave me humiliated and broke. The irony was that I would have given him a divorce if he had simply asked. I would have been fair, generous even, dividing our assets equitably and wishing him well in whatever new life he chose to pursue. But Gregory had not wanted fair. He had wanted to win, to walk away with everything while leaving me with nothing, to punish me for perceived slights I could only guess at. My phone buzzed again. Another voicemail from Gregory, this one more frantic than the last. "Danielle, I know you're there. I know you can hear this. Whatever you did, you need to undo it right now. That money is mine too. I earned it just as much as you did. You can't just freeze me out like this. I have plans. We have plans. Just call me back and we'll work this out like adults. I deleted the message without listening to it a second time. There was nothing to work out. No negotiation to be had. Gregory had made his choice when he texted me this afternoon, and I had made mine when I typed those two simple words in response. The hotel I checked into was downtown, a sleek modern building with a view of the Mississippi River and excellent security. I registered under my business name rather than my personal one, another small precaution that probably was not necessary, but gave me peace of mind. The room was impersonal and clean, a temporary haven where I could think without the weight of our shared history pressing down on me. Felicity called at 7 p.m. with an update. The police are very interested in the loan fraud. They're reviewing the documents now and should have a warrant issued by tomorrow morning. I've also filed an emergency motion to freeze all jointly held assets pending investigation of the fraudulent loan. That includes the house, any remaining funds in accounts with both your names, and the vehicle he sold without your permission. What happens when they arrest him? That depends on several factors. Flight risk is significant, given the Dubai plans. I've already informed them about the plane tickets. If I were betting, I would say they'll pick him up tonight or early tomorrow, before he has a chance to leave the country. I sat on the hotel bed, watching the city lights reflect off the river below. Somewhere out there, Gregory was panicking, trying to understand how his perfect plan had unraveled so completely. Did he blame me? Probably. Did he recognize his own culpability? Unlikely. My laptop was open beside me, and I pulled up the footage from our home security system again. The house was dark now, empty except for the furniture and belongings Gregory had deemed not worth taking. Our wedding album sat on the coffee table where he had left it, next to a framed photograph of his parents who had passed away years ago. He had taken items of monetary value but left behind anything that might slow him down or carry emotional weight. Another notification appeared on my screen. Gregory had returned to the house, this time with Sienna in tow. They moved through the rooms quickly, grabbing items I assumed he had forgotten in his earlier trips. I watched them pause in the kitchen, having what appeared to be an argument. Sienna gestured wildly, pointing at her watch, then at Gregory. He shook his head, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The audio feed picked up fragments of their conversation. Can't just cancel everything now. I quit my job. I told my roommate I was leaving. I know. But something happened with the money. Just give me a few days to figure it out. A few days? The flight is tomorrow. The apartment in Dubai is waiting. You said this was all planned out. It was planned out. She did something. She must have known somehow. Sienna's voice rose, sharp with accusation. You said she was clueless. You said she spent all her time at work and never paid attention to anything. So how did she know? Good question, I thought, watching them through the camera lens. The truth was, I had not known about Sienna specifically until today. But I had known something was wrong, had sensed the shift in Gregory's behavior even if I could not articulate exactly what had changed. Instinct and experience had led me to protect my assets, and that protection had saved me from the disaster he had intended. My phone rang, and this time it was an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Mrs. Danielle? This is Detective Patricia calling from the Minneapolis Police Department. I need to speak with you about some documents your attorney submitted regarding suspected loan fraud. Are you available to come to the station tomorrow morning? I confirmed that I was available, agreeing to meet her at 9 a.m. The detective's voice was professional but sympathetic, the tone of someone who had seen too many cases like mine and understood the betrayal involved. I want you to know we take these matters very seriously, Detective Patricia said. Forging a spouse's signature on loan documents is a federal offense. If the evidence is as clear as your attorney suggests, we'll be pursuing charges immediately. After the call ended, I sat in the quiet hotel room and allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had happened. 27 years of marriage ending not with a conversation or even a proper goodbye, but with a cruel text message designed to maximize my pain. Gregory had wanted me to feel helpless, abandoned, destroyed. Instead, I felt something closer to relief. The security footage showed Gregory and Sienna leaving the house for what I suspected was the last time. They drove away in his truck, the vehicle packed with everything they had decided was worth saving from our life together. I made a note of the time, 9 p.m., and sent the footage to Felicity with a message explaining their movements. Tomorrow would bring police involvement, legal proceedings, and the slow unraveling of the life Gregory had tried to steal from me. But tonight, I allowed myself to simply exist in this neutral space, free from the weight of a failing marriage I had not even realized was ending. My phone buzzed one final time before I silenced it for the night. A text message from Gregory, shorter than his previous attempts at contact. "You'll regret this." I typed a response, then deleted it. There was nothing left to say to him, no point in engaging with threats or anger. Instead, I set down my phone, closed my laptop, and prepared for sleep. Tomorrow would be a long day, but I would face it with clear eyes and the certain knowledge that I had protected what mattered most. I arrived at the police station 15 minutes early, dressed in a charcoal business suit that projected competence and control. Detective Patricia met me in the lobby, a woman in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. She led me to a small conference room where Felicity was already waiting, her briefcase open, and documents organized in neat stacks across the table. "Thank you for coming in," Detective Patricia said, settling into her chair with a notepad and pen. "I've reviewed the materials your attorney provided, and I have to say, this is one of the more clear-cut cases of loan fraud I've encountered. The signature on the loan documents doesn't match your verified signature on file, and the loan officer who processed the application has confirmed that only your husband appeared at the appointment." I nodded, listening as she walked through the timeline. Gregory had applied for a home equity loan 6 weeks ago, claiming I was unable to attend the appointment due to business travel. He had provided what appeared to be my signature on the authorization forms, but a cursory comparison showed obvious differences in the handwriting. The loan company had approved $75,000, money Gregory had deposited into a separate account I had never known existed. "Where is he now?" I asked, my voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. "That's what we're trying to determine. We sent officers to your home address this morning, but the property was empty. His cell phone is off, and his truck hasn't been spotted by any traffic cameras since last night around 11 p.m. We have alerts out at all airports and border crossings, but if he's smart, he'll stay put somewhere and wait for things to cool down." Felicity leaned forward, her expression serious. "Danielle, there's something else we need to discuss. The loan Gregory took out has a payment due in 3 days. If it's not paid, the loan company can begin foreclosure proceedings on your house." My stomach dropped. "But I didn't sign for that loan. How can they foreclose on my property for a debt I didn't authorize?" "Because your name is on the deed, and Gregory forged your signature convincingly enough that the loan was processed. We're filing motions to invalidate the loan based on the fraud, but that takes time. In the meantime, the debt exists, and the loan company has legal standing to pursue collection." Detective Patricia interjected, "We're treating this as an active criminal investigation, which should help with the civil matters. Once we locate your husband and arrest him, it will strengthen your case considerably. But I won't lie to you, these situations can get messy. He's motivated to stay hidden, especially now that he knows we're looking for him." I spent the next 2 hours at the police station, signing statements and reviewing evidence. The security footage from my home played on a monitor in the conference room, and Detective Patricia took notes as I narrated the events captured on camera. Gregory loading suitcases, meeting with Sienna, arguing in the kitchen. Each moment documented his intent to abandon our marriage and steal as much as possible on his way out. When I finally left the station, exhaustion had settled into my bones. I drove to my office, needing the familiar environment to ground myself. My assistant, a capable woman named Octavia who had been with the company for 8 years, took one look at my face and immediately brought coffee without being asked. "Everything okay?" she asked, her tone careful but concerned. I considered lying. offering some bland reassurance that would maintain the professional distance I usually kept with employees. But Octavia had earned my trust over the years, and I found myself telling her everything. The text message, the empty bank account, the forged loan, Gregory's disappearance. She listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from shock to anger to determination. "What do you need?" she asked when I finished. "How can I help?" "I need to focus on work," I said simply. "I need something that makes sense, something I can control. Can you pull together the quarterly reports? I want to review every account, every contract, make sure nothing else has been compromised." Octavia nodded and left my office, returning within minutes with the files I had requested. I buried myself in spreadsheets and logistics reports, finding comfort in the predictable world of supply chains and inventory management. My company ran like clockwork, a machine I had built and maintained through careful attention and strategic planning. Unlike my marriage, I understood every component here, could trace every decision back to its origin and forward to its consequences. My phone rang at 2 p.m., an unknown number again, but this time the voice on the other end was young and frightened. "Mrs. Danielle, this is Sienna. I need to talk to you about Gregory." I closed the file I had been reviewing, giving her my full attention. "Go ahead." "He's losing it. We're at a motel outside of the city, and he's been on his phone all morning trying to access accounts that aren't working. He keeps saying you froze everything, that you ruined his plans. I'm scared. This isn't what he promised me." "What did he promise you exactly?" There was a long pause. "He said we'd move to Dubai, that he had plenty of money saved up, that we'd live in a beautiful apartment by the water. He said you were cold and distant, that you didn't love him anymore, that leaving was the best thing for everyone. But now there's no money, and he's talking about doing things that sound illegal, and I just want to go home." I felt a flicker of something that might have been pity. "Where are you, Sienna?" "I can't tell you that. He'd kill me if he knew I called. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't know he was lying about everything. I thought he was this successful businessman who was trapped in an unhappy marriage. I didn't know he was stealing from you." "But you knew he was married." Another pause. "Yes, I knew that part." The call with Sienna ended abruptly when I heard Gregory's voice in the background asking who she was talking to. The line went dead before I could say anything else, leaving me with more questions than answers. I immediately called Detective Patricia and relayed the conversation, including the detail about them staying at a motel outside the city. "That narrows it down considerably," the detective said. "There are only about 15 motels in the immediate surrounding area. We'll start checking them now, see if we can locate his truck or get a positive identification. The fact that his girlfriend called you suggests things are falling apart between them. That's good for us, bad for him." I returned to my work, but concentration proved elusive. Every few minutes, I found myself checking my phone, waiting for updates from the police, or another call from Sienna or Gregory himself. The office hummed with its usual activity around me, employees moving between cubicles, phones ringing, the background noise of a successful business operating at full capacity. They had no idea their boss was navigating a personal crisis that threatened to upend everything. Octavia appeared in my doorway again at 4 p.m., this time with a worried expression. "There's someone here to see you. He says he's Gregory's brother. Should I send him away?" I had not spoken to Theodore in over a year, not since a tense Thanksgiving dinner where he had drunk too much wine and lectured me about neglecting my marriage in favor of my career. Gregory had defended me then, or so I thought. Now I wondered if Theodore's words had been rehearsed, a coordinated attack designed to make me feel guilty for my success. "Send him in," I said, curious about what Theodore wanted. He entered my office looking uncomfortable, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, and his eyes avoiding mine. Theodore was 3 years younger than Gregory, a high school teacher who had always seemed slightly resentful of his brother's marriage to a successful businesswoman. He settled into the chair across from my desk without waiting for an invitation. "I suppose you've heard what happened," I said, keeping my tone neutral. Theodore nodded. "Gregory called me last night. He was frantic, saying you'd stolen all his money and were trying to frame him for crimes he didn't commit. I didn't believe him at first, but then he sent me documents showing the loan, the bank statements, everything. He wants me to talk to you, convince you to drop whatever charges you've filed." I leaned back in my chair, studying Gregory's brother with new clarity. Did he tell you he forged my signature on that loan? Did he mention that he cleaned out our joint account and sold my car without permission, before sending me a text message saying he was leaving me for a woman half my age? Theodore's face flushed. He said you were vindictive, that you couldn't handle him finding happiness with someone else. He said you'd been planning to divorce him anyway and take everything. I see. And you believed that story without questioning it? I've known my brother his entire life. He's not perfect, but he's not a criminal either. Whatever's happening here, I think you both need to step back and handle this like adults. Getting the police involved is just going to make everything worse. I stood, signaling that the conversation was over. Your brother committed fraud. He forged my signature on a loan document, which is a federal crime. He took money that didn't belong to him and planned to flee the country. These aren't misunderstandings or relationship problems. They're crimes. And I will not drop the charges or pretend this didn't happen just because it's inconvenient for him. Theodore stood as well, his face hardening. You're making a mistake. Gregory told me you'd be like this, all high and mighty, acting like you're the victim when you're really just a bitter woman who can't accept that he moved on. But fine, do what you want. Just remember that you're the one destroying a family over money. After he left, I sat in the silence of my office and let his words wash over me without taking root. Gregory had sent his brother to intimidate me, to make me feel guilty for protecting myself from theft and fraud. It was another manipulation, another attempt to control the narrative and position himself as the wronged party. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Patricia. Located the motel. Officers are en route. We'll update you shortly. I watched the minutes tick by on my desk clock, each one feeling longer than the last. At 5 p.m., my phone rang. We have him in custody, Detective Patricia said, satisfaction evident in her voice. Found him at a motel near the airport, just like the girlfriend suggested. He was packing up to move locations when our officers arrived. Tried to run, actually. Made it about 50 feet before they caught him in the parking lot. What happens now? He'll be arraigned tomorrow morning on charges of loan fraud, theft, and forgery. Given the flight risk and the evidence of planning to leave the country, I expect bail will be set fairly high. You should come to the arraignment if you're able. The judge will want to hear your statement. I agreed to be there, then ended the call and sat in the growing darkness of my office. Gregory was in custody, arrested like a common criminal in a motel parking lot while trying to flee from the consequences of his actions. The man I had married 27 years ago would never have imagined ending up this way. But then, the man I married had probably never existed outside of my own hopeful imagination. Octavia knocked softly before entering. I'm heading out for the day, but I wanted to check on you first. Have you eaten anything? I could not remember my last meal. No, I suppose I haven't. Come on then. I'm taking you to dinner. You can tell me to mind my own business, but I'm not leaving you here alone to spiral. We went to a small bistro 3 blocks from the office, a quiet place where I sometimes took clients for informal meetings. Octavia ordered for both of us when I proved incapable of making decisions about food, and we sat in a corner booth away from the other diners. She waited until the server brought water and bread before speaking. How long did you know something was wrong? She asked. 3 weeks, maybe a month. Small things that didn't add up. Charges on our credit card statement I didn't recognize. Gregory being vague about his schedule. A distance between us that felt different than usual. I didn't know about Sienna specifically, but I knew something had shifted. And you protected yourself before confronting him. Yes. Felicity helped me move assets into accounts he couldn't access, changed the mortgage terms so I was the sole owner despite his name being on the deed. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew I needed to be prepared for something. Octavia shook her head slowly. That's incredibly smart. Most people would have confronted their spouse immediately, given them a chance to hide more assets or create a better cover story. You documented everything and secured your position first. The food arrived, and I picked at my meal without much appetite. Octavia ate steadily, keeping up a flow of conversation about work matters that required no emotional investment. She told me about a new contract we were finalizing with a hospital network in Wisconsin, a shipping delay that had been resolved, an employee who was requesting time off for her wedding. Normal things, business as usual, the world continuing to turn despite my personal upheaval. My phone buzzed repeatedly throughout the meal. Theodore calling, then texting, then calling again. I ignored him, focusing instead on the immediate future. Tomorrow's arraignment, the legal proceedings that would follow, the process of disentangling my life from Gregory's. The house would need to be sold eventually, our possessions divided, the shared history of nearly 3 decades reduced to line items in a divorce settlement. "What are you thinking?" Octavia asked, watching me push food around my plate. That I'm 54 years old and starting over. That I built a successful company but failed at the one relationship I thought was permanent. That 27 years feels like a long time until it's suddenly over, and then it feels like nothing at all. You didn't fail. He did. He's the one who broke promises, who lied and stole and planned to abandon you. None of that reflects on you or your worth. I wanted to believe her. But doubt had planted itself in my mind. Had I been a bad wife? Had I neglected Gregory while building my business? Had I missed signs that would have been obvious to someone paying closer attention? The questions circled endlessly, offering no resolution. We finished dinner, and Octavia drove me back to the hotel where I was staying. She made me promise to call if I needed anything, then waited until I was safely inside the lobby before driving away. I rode the elevator to my floor, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle heavily across my shoulders. The hotel room was exactly as I had left it that morning, the bed made by housekeeping and fresh towels hanging in the bathroom. I stood at the window looking out at the city lights, wondering where Gregory was spending his night. A jail cell, probably, awaiting arraignment on charges that could send him to prison for years. The thought should have brought satisfaction, but instead, I felt only a hollow emptiness. My phone rang at 10 p.m. Theodore again, persistent despite my earlier silence. This time I answered. "What do you want?" "Gregory asked me to call you. He wants to talk, to explain everything. He says if you'll just listen to his side of the story, you'll understand why he did what he did." There's nothing to understand. He committed crimes. The police have evidence. What story could possibly justify forgery and theft? Theodore's voice hardened. "You really are as cold as he said. Your own husband is sitting in jail, and you can't even spare 5 minutes to hear him out. No wonder he wanted to leave." I ended the call without responding, blocking Theodore's number immediately afterward. Let them both believe I was cold and vindictive if it made them feel better. I knew the truth, and that was enough. Sleep came fitfully that night, interrupted by dreams where Gregory was both the man I married and a stranger I had never known. I woke repeatedly, checking my phone for messages that never arrived, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the hotel settling around me. By 6 a.m., I gave up on rest entirely and prepared for the arraignment. The courthouse was downtown, an imposing building of stone and glass that housed the machinery of justice. I met Felicity in the lobby at 8 a.m., and we went through security together before making our way to the appropriate courtroom. Detective Patricia was already there, reviewing notes with the prosecuting attorney. Gregory was led in at 9 a.m. wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by circumstances and choices that had brought him to this moment. His eyes found mine across the courtroom, and I saw anger there, resentment, but no remorse. He still believed he was the victim in this scenario. that I had somehow wronged him by refusing to be destroyed by his betrayal. The arraignment itself was brief and procedural. The charges were read aloud: loan fraud, forgery, theft, attempted flight to avoid prosecution. Gregory's public defender entered a plea of not guilty and requested reasonable bail, citing his ties to the community and lack of criminal history. The prosecutor countered with evidence of flight risk, including the plane tickets to Dubai and the girlfriend waiting in the motel room during his arrest. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, listened to both arguments before setting bail at $150,000. Gregory's face went pale. He had no access to that kind of money, not anymore. Not after I had frozen the joint accounts and secured my assets. His brother Theodore sat in the back of the courtroom, but I doubted a high school teacher had the resources to post such a significant bond. As Gregory was led away, he turned back to look at me one final time. "This isn't over," he mouthed, the words silent but clear. I held his gaze until the bailiff guided him through the door, refusing to be the first to look away. 3 days after the arraignment, I returned to the house for the first time since Gregory's arrest. The police had released it from the active crime scene designation, and Felicity advised that I needed to secure the property and document everything for the divorce proceedings. I stood in the driveway for a long moment before unlocking the front door, steeling myself for the emotional impact of walking through rooms filled with the debris of a failed marriage. The house felt hollow and strange, as if it belonged to someone else entirely. Gregory's absence was palpable in every room, marked by empty spaces where his belongings had been, and the lingering scent of his cologne in the bedroom. I moved through each space methodically, photographing everything as Felicity had instructed, creating a visual record of what remained and what had been taken. In his office, I found evidence of planning that stretched back months before his departure. Bank statements printed and highlighted, showing the gradual accumulation of funds in the account I had never known existed. Lists of items to sell, including my car and several pieces of furniture he had thought were valuable. A folder labeled Dubai, containing apartment listings, job postings, and tourist information about starting a new life in a country with no extradition treaty to the United States. That last detail struck me as particularly calculated. Gregory had not chosen Dubai for its beauty or opportunities, but because he believed he could hide there from the consequences of his crimes. He had researched which countries would not send him back to face charges, had planned his escape down to the smallest detail. The only thing he had not anticipated was me fighting back. My phone rang as I stood in his office, surrounded by evidence of his betrayal. Detective Patricia's name appeared on the screen. "I wanted to update you on the case," she said. "Gregory's public defender is pushing for a plea deal. They're offering to plead guilty to the theft charges in exchange for dropping the fraud and forgery counts. The prosecutor is inclined to accept, given the backlog of cases and the clear evidence we have." What would that mean for sentencing? Probably 2 to 4 years, with possibility of parole after 18 months. He'd also be required to pay restitution for the money he stole, though collecting on that might prove difficult given his financial situation. I walked to the window, looking out at the neighborhood where we had lived for over a decade. What do you think I should do? That's not really my call to make. But I will say this. Trials are long and expensive, and there's always a chance something unexpected happens. A plea deal guarantees consequences, even if they're not as severe as what a trial might bring. It's a bird in the hand versus 2 in the bush situation. After she hung up, I called Felicity and relayed the conversation. She was quiet for a moment before responding. "The decision is ultimately yours, but I'd advise accepting the plea deal. Gregory will serve time, pay restitution, and have a criminal record that will follow him for the rest of his life. That's a significant punishment, and it avoids the uncertainty and stress of a trial. Plus, it moves us forward faster on the divorce proceedings." I agreed to the plea deal, signing the necessary documents that afternoon. Within a week, Gregory appeared before the judge again and formally pleaded guilty to theft charges. I attended the hearing, watching as he stood before the court and admitted what he had done. His voice was barely audible as he confirmed his guilt, and he refused to look in my direction even once during the entire proceeding. The judge sentenced him to 3 years in state prison with eligibility for parole after 20 months. She also ordered him to pay full restitution of $143,000, plus the $75,000 fraudulent loan, along with interest and court costs. The total came to nearly $230,000, a sum Gregory had no way of paying given that he had no assets and no job. "Mr. Gregory," the judge said sternly, "you betrayed the trust of your spouse and attempted to defraud financial institutions through forgery and deception. You plan to flee the country to avoid accountability for your actions. This court takes such matters very seriously. You will serve your sentence in full, and you will be required to make restitution payments for the rest of your working life if necessary. Do you understand?" Gregory nodded, his shoulders slumped in defeat. As the bailiff led him away to begin his sentence, I felt no satisfaction, only a profound sadness for all the years wasted on someone who had valued me so little. The divorce proceedings moved quickly after his conviction. Gregory signed all the papers without contest from his prison cell, accepting the terms Felicity had drafted. I kept the house, the business, and all assets in my name. He kept his truck, his personal belongings in storage, and the debt he owed to me in the courts. The marriage was officially dissolved 4 months after he had sent that cruel text message, our 27 years together reduced to a legal document filed with the county clerk. Sienna had disappeared completely after Gregory's arrest, blocking my number and deleting all her social media accounts. I heard through Octavia, who had heard from someone else, that she had moved back to her home state and was working at a restaurant while trying to forget the entire disaster. I bore her no particular ill will. She had been foolish and selfish, but Gregory had been the architect of the destruction, and he was the one paying the price. 6 months after Gregory began his prison sentence, I received a letter forwarded through Felicity's office. His handwriting on the envelope was immediately recognizable, and I debated throwing it away unopened. Curiosity won out, and I carefully unfolded the pages inside. The letter was long and rambling, full of justifications and excuses that rang hollow even on paper. Gregory claimed he had felt neglected and unappreciated, that my focus on the business had left him feeling like an afterthought in my life. He wrote about Sienna with an almost nauseating romanticism, describing how she had made him feel young and valued again. He admitted the theft had been wrong, but insisted he had panicked when he realized I was pulling away from him emotionally. What struck me most was the complete absence of genuine remorse. Every sentence contained some qualifier, some attempt to shift blame, or minimize his actions. He never once acknowledged the cruelty of his text message, the calculated nature of his theft, or the years of lies that must have preceded his final betrayal. In his mind, he was still the victim, punished too harshly for the crime of seeking happiness. I wrote one line in response and had Felicity deliver it to him through official channels. "You're right that I was focused on my business. I built something substantial while you built nothing but excuses. That's the difference between us." The response felt appropriate and final. I had no interest in relitigating our marriage or debating who was responsible for its failure. Gregory had made his choices, and I had made mine. We would both live with the consequences. My company continued to thrive in the months following the divorce. Without the distraction of a failing marriage, I threw myself into expansion plans that I had been considering for years. We opened new distribution centers in 3 states, hired another 40 employees, and secured contracts with 2 major hospital systems that doubled our annual revenue. The business that Gregory had dismissed as a vague source of money became my refuge and my validation. Octavia was promoted to operations manager, a role she had earned through competence and loyalty during the most difficult period of my life. She helped me reorganize the office structure and implement new systems that increased efficiency across all departments. We worked well together, and I found myself trusting her judgment on major decisions in a way I had never trusted Gregory's input. Theodore attempted to contact me several times in the months after his brother's sentencing, leaving voicemails that progressed from angry to pleading to resigned. He seemed to believe I had some obligation to help Gregory, to visit him in prison or contribute to his commissary account, or write letters supporting early parole. I ignored every message, blocking his number eventually when the calls became too frequent. The house sold for significantly more than I had expected, the hot real estate market working in my favor. I purchased a smaller condominium downtown, a modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city that reminded me every morning that I had survived and rebuilt. The furniture from the old house went to charity or storage, except for a few pieces with sentimental value that I could not bring myself to discard. One afternoon, nearly a year after Gregory's arrest, I was reviewing quarterly reports when Octavia appeared in my office doorway, with an unusual expression. "There's someone here to see you. She says her name is Sienna, and that she needs to apologize in person. Should I send her away?" I considered for a moment, then nodded. "Send her in. I'm curious what she has to say." Sienna entered my office looking significantly different than she had in the security footage. Her hair was shorter, her clothes more conservative, and her entire demeanor suggested someone who had been through an ordeal and emerged changed. She sat down carefully when I gestured to the chair across from my desk, her hands folded in her lap like a penitent child. "Thank you for seeing me," she began, her voice quiet. "I know you have no reason to listen to anything I have to say, but I needed to tell you in person that I'm sorry. I was selfish and stupid, and I helped destroy your marriage without even thinking about the consequences." I studied her for a long moment. "Why are you here now? What do you want from me?" "Nothing. I don't want anything. I just needed you to know that I understand what I did was wrong. Gregory told me so many lies, but that doesn't excuse my choices. I knew he was married. I knew what we were doing was hurting someone. I just didn't care because I thought I was special, that our situation was different somehow. And now?" Sienna looked down at her hands, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now I know better. Gregory wrote to me from prison, trying to convince me to wait for him, promising we'd still move to Dubai together when he got out. Reading those letters, I realized he was still lying, still manipulating, still refusing to take any real responsibility. He would have done the same thing to me eventually, once I got too old or too expensive or too inconvenient." I leaned back in my chair, considering her words. "What do you want me to say? That I forgive you? That what happened was okay because you learned a lesson?" "No, nothing like that. I just needed to face you and admit what I did. I've been carrying around so much guilt, and my therapist suggested that apologizing might help me move forward. But this isn't about making me feel better. It's about acknowledging the harm I caused you." We sat in silence for a moment, and I found myself feeling something unexpected. A distant sort of sympathy for this young woman who had been used by Gregory just as thoroughly as I had been, if in a different way. "I appreciate you coming here," I said finally. "It took courage, and not many people would have done it. I can't say I forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I accept your apology, and I hope you've genuinely learned from this experience." Sienna nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. "I have. I really have. And for what it's worth, I think what you did was incredible. Gregory thought he'd destroyed you, but you were 10 steps ahead the entire time. You protected yourself and made sure he faced consequences. That's powerful, and I admire it even though I was on the wrong side of it." After she left, I sat in my office thinking about forgiveness and moving forward. I had spent a year rebuilding my life, creating something new from the ashes of my failed marriage. The anger that had fueled me in those first weeks had faded into something more like acceptance. Gregory had betrayed me, yes, but in doing so, he had freed me from a relationship that had become empty long before his final exit. The divorce had been finalized, the legal matters settled, the property divided. Gregory was serving his sentence and would continue paying restitution for years to come. Theodore had finally stopped calling, accepting that I would not be swayed by family loyalty or guilt. Sienna had apologized and disappeared back into her own life, carrying her own lessons and regrets. I was 55 years old, running a successful company that employed over 150 people across multiple states. I owned property free and clear, had substantial savings and investments, and answered to no one but myself. The life I was building bore no resemblance to the one I had lived with Gregory, and that felt like a victory all its own. On the 1-year anniversary of receiving that devastating text message, I took myself to dinner at an expensive restaurant overlooking the city. I ordered the best wine on the menu, and a meal I would never have chosen when I was trying to please someone else's palate. As I sat alone at a table for one, I raised my glass in a silent toast to survival, to resilience, to the strength I had not known I possessed until I was forced to use it. My phone buzzed with a message from Octavia. "Thinking of you today. Hope you're celebrating how far you've come." I smiled and sent back a simple response. "I am." The future stretched out before me, uncertain but filled with possibility. I had learned that I could trust my instincts, protect what mattered, and rebuild from devastation. Gregory had tried to leave me with nothing, but in the end, he had given me something valuable, proof that I was stronger than he ever imagined and smarter than he ever acknowledged. Gregory served his full 3-year sentence after his parole request was denied due to his continued refusal to take full responsibility for his crimes. Upon release, he found himself unemployable in any professional capacity due to his criminal record, working instead a series of low-wage jobs that barely covered his basic expenses and the mandatory restitution payments that consumed a significant portion of every paycheck. Sienna never spoke to him again, having moved across the country and built a new life far from the wreckage of their brief relationship. Theodore maintained minimal contact with his brother, their relationship fractured beyond repair by Gregory's crimes and subsequent attempts to manipulate family members into supporting his victim narrative. The financial debt Gregory owed would follow him for decades, a permanent reminder of the price of betrayal and the consequences of underestimating the woman he had sworn to honor. As I looked out over the city lights that night, I realized that revenge had never been about destroying Gregory or making him suffer. It had been about refusing to be destroyed myself, about standing firm in my worth and demanding accountability for actions meant to diminish me. That was the real victory, the true ending to a story that had begun with cruelty, but concluded with strength.